Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for joining us. Why is my studio in slow motion here? Weird. It literally just was not doing that. I don't know what the hell is going on here. But we got a great show for you tonight. James Szubski is going to be here momentarily to talk about the high strangeness in the Columbia Gorge. We're going to have a great time with him tonight. Let me just go like this here for a second. Oh. There we go. Like my new shirt, this is courtesy of T-Bone. T-Bone sent me a couple of shirts. This shirt's amazing. I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, let's continue on. Is my audio okay? Tim James, I know you're listening. Give me an update on Facebook Messenger. I don't know what's going on here. So weird. All right, let's get to roll call while we're waiting. And who do we have first? We have Kitty Caddywhack with the gold medal, Eternity Eternal with the silver, Race Fan with a bronze medal tonight. Good to have you all here. And then let's continue on with Lenda, Attorney at Large, Michael Morris, Robert Lamoth, Kitty Caddywhack, a Road Flare. Nice to have you all here. Mel WD-40 is here lubing us up for tonight's show because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth. You don't want any of that rigidness, so make sure you check it on out and, yeah, have some fun with it. Have some fun with it. Okay. Moving on down, David Norberg, nice to have you here. Hi there, Luscious Jewels. And let's see here. Who's next? Babylon Rose is here. Babylon Rose will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. Moving on down, we have next on our list, Fast Hemi. Michelle Wilfong. Necessary Dialogue. Nice to have you all here. Scrolling on down, there's Ethanol. If you wave at Ethanol, he always waves back. And who's next on our list? Let's say hello to Paul Shreves. Little Timmy James. Good to see you, my friend. As we continue on with our roll call tonight, just another guy named Harry. Nice to have you here. Brooke Michelle, Destiny Rocks. Thank you two ladies for coming on in. Lisa Smith. And number 42 in your program, starting at left wing tonight from Stockholm, Sweden, Lars Jansson. Good morning, Skip to my Lou, Bar Madison, JSCO, and Walter Kochabinski. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Scrolling on down, we have next Deanna Ann. And Kitty Caddywhack, thank you for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. The Super Chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis, so thank you very, very much. Benno, how you doing tonight? Good to see you. Necessary Dialogue, thank you for that amazing Super Chat. Greatly appreciate your love and support of SOR. Farah Jade, welcome to SOR Chat. Thank you. Don't forget to hit subscribe, ring that bell. Rock and Rory, nice to see you. Little Cam on YouTube. 450 push-ups in 5.5 minutes to warm up for James tonight. He is jacked up for tonight's show. Bombshell Bomber is here. Bomber will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. On X, Dookie Pickles, nice to have you here. As we continue on with our roll call, Valerie Peters, nice to see you. And Hillbilly Herb, Delilah, good to have you both here. Hi there, Jaquetta, nice to see you. As we continue on with our roll call, Flubber Lane, Derek the Whoopoo, Ozzy, thank you all for coming on in. Hi there, Kaz, Kurt M., and Matthew Goodka. Good to have you all here. Let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We are going to have a great show with James Szubski tonight. We're going to talk about the high strangeness of the Columbia Gorge. Coming up momentarily, we are in roll call right now on YouTube. Hanging on out as we say hello to Brooke Michelle. Thank you for joining us. And who is next on our list? Scrolling on down, we have Hippie Deidre. Nice to see you from Vancouver Island. And we are caught up. Reminder, the Super Chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. Throw those horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read the Newswire. Check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We have an amazing show coming up for you tonight from the Columbia Gorge and Margie's Outdoor Store. We have James Szubski coming in. We're going to talk Bigfoot, portals, UFOs, fae, ghosts, and everything strange, including a creature that you may have never heard of that's being seen right along the Columbia River. Then in hour number 3, it's a busy one. We have Swamp Dweller. We have Little Timmy James and the UFO report. It's Dave 101 night and the weird news of the week. So, because it's jam-packed, we're going to hop right to it. James Szubski is a former volunteer search and rescue EMT, wildland firefighter, and mountain guide, and he's the chief operating officer of Margie's Outdoor Store in Bingen, Washington. He is an expert in a wide array of paranormal activity in the Columbia River Gorge, including the Klickitat. I pronounce that right. Hold on. Klickitat Ape. Have you ever heard of the Klickitat Ape? We're going to find out what this thing is tonight. We really are. I'm excited about this show, and let me tell you why. I said this to James right before we went on air. You know, there's a lot of people who are trying to solve the mysteries. There's a lot of people trying to bring the science into the field, make everything nuts and bolts or flesh and blood. But the one thing James is doing that I can really admire, through his store, okay, Margie's Outdoor Store, he has a giant sign out there that says, and I'm going to read this. It says, file paranormal reports here. Klickitat Ape, cat encounters, Sasquatch sightings, portal openings, temporal shifts, UFO contacts, ghost experiences, fey mischief, strange occurrences, etc. And he's getting hundreds of stories from people just like you and me. See, that's what this is about. This isn't about the science of everything or disclosure or trying to figure out if Sasquatch is flesh and blood or an anomalous type creature with supernatural abilities or is a former human that should be granted the right to vote. This is about telling human stories of real human interactions and encounters. And I'm very proud to bring James Szubski on Spaced Out Radio for the first time. James, thank you so much for coming on in. How are you? There we go. There we go. James, for you, as we start this endeavor tonight for the next couple of hours, this has been a very interesting conversation for you, dealing with people on a daily basis, coming on in where they don't have to feel shy about it when they walk into Margie's outdoor store. They are somebody who can just come on in and say, 15 years ago, I was just out backpacking and something happened. And I'm sure you've heard all of those type of stories from fishermen on the Columbia River to those who are camping out in the forest. Why do it? Why set this up for the store?
Well, it's a great question. And, as you said in the intro, to me, I'm just so intrigued by the human nature of these experiences. It's this. What it does for me is it brings wonder to the world. And I think that's something that a lot of people have forgotten, that this is a wondrous place. And I love living in a place where all the questions don't yet have answers. And it might help to give a little context about, where I am and how this whole thing started. So we're located in the Columbia River Gorge. This is one of the most jaw-droppingly beautiful places in the world. And so the Columbia River is the biggest river in North or South America that flows into the Pacific Ocean. And there's an enormous gorge here carved by ancient floods. About 4 years ago, my mother-in-law passed away. And my wife and I made the decision to come down and run the family businesses that she had started. And it was a couple of stores in a tiny little town of 750 people. We sort of did some reformatting to one of the stores and made it more of an outdoor adventure store. And kind of on a lark, I put a Sasquatch in the logo. I mean, the gorge is famous for Bigfoot sightings. Washington State has the most Bigfoot sightings per capita of any state in the U.S. And it also has the most UFO sightings of any state in the U.S. But there are two counties, Klickitat County in the east and Skamania County in the west. And Skamania County was the first governmental body in the world to create Bigfoot protection legislation. And the county is considered a Sasquatch sanctuary. And if you shoot and kill a Sasquatch here, you'll be charged with manslaughter. So there's this rich history of these kinds of strange sightings. So I put this Sasquatch in the logo, and within days, people started coming in organically and whispering to us about the astonishing encounters they were having in the wilderness areas. And, to paint a picture, like within 30 or 40 miles of my store, there are 3 glacier-clad stratovolcanoes. You got Mount Hood, famous for Bigfoot sightings, Mount Adams, famous for UFO sightings, and Mount St. Helens, which famously erupted in 1980. It's surrounded by, so the east side is sort of like a high plains desert, austere, beautiful, mysterious. And the west side is a Pacific Northwest rainforest with, deep brooding forests and, all of the sort of mystery you find in a place like that. There are waterfalls here that are 600 feet tall. There are hundreds of caves and lava tubes. It's an adventurer's paradise, whitewater rafting, rock climbing, mountaineering, windsurfing, paragliding. It all happens here. There's about 10 people per square mile. So it's a pretty rugged and rural area. And so we had the opportunity to move down here. Me, like you said in the intro, I'm a former wildland forest firefighter, a search and rescue EMT, a decorated infantry soldier. And so adventure is part of my DNA. And this felt like winning the lottery to come down here. You'd have the opportunity to run some businesses and, make a life. And then to find out that this place it seems to be populated with amazing creatures and strange phenomenon, it just was astonishing. And so we were getting these reports, and I thought, this is super interesting. And honestly, there's a little bit of a business motivation. I thought, let's do something unique here, and let's start a paranormal reporting program. But I made a really strong commitment, and I gave really special instructions to all the employees. I said, we are going to treat everyone who comes in with an unusual story with the utmost dignity and respect. And we're going to take in the information, and no matter how strange or outlandish it sounds to us, we're going to let that be what it is. We're not going to try to insert what we think that they experienced on their story. We're just going to take in the data and see where it leads us. I wanted us to be a safe place for ordinary people to talk about extraordinary experiences. And boy, it has been incredibly rewarding. And we have, like you said in the intro, tons of Sasquatch sightings, tons of UFO sightings, pictures, hair samples, footprints. And many of my employees have had unusual experiences, and I've had some myself. So, the motivation started as curiosity and a little bit of a business interest, like maybe we could do something unique, but it has blossomed beyond my wildest imaginations and has become incredibly satisfying, and meaningful and poignant to me in many ways that I couldn't have predicted at the beginning.
Were you a believer before all of this?
I wouldn't say I was superstitious, but I was a little suspicious. Like I thought, I hadn't closed my mind to the ideas, and I had had some unusual experiences. In fact, before we started the paranormal program, so there was a period of time after Margie passed away, where my wife was still living in Seattle, and I was down here managing the businesses and sort of figuring out what life was going to be like. And so I had a lot of time alone, and I went out to this desert mesa called Horse Thief Butte, and it's sort of like from the road, it looks like a classic desert mesa, steep sides, flat top. But if you get out of your car and explore, you'll find that it is riddled with a hidden labyrinth of secret passageways and natural amphitheaters and private little coves. There are rock stairways that can lead you to the roof with these astonishing views of the Columbia River Gorge, like a 14-mile sweep of it, and Mount Hood in the background. And right below this, rocky place where there are petroglyphs on the wall and stone artifacts littered in the canyon floors, there's Horse Thief Lake. And I was up there one June evening. It was probably 4 years ago, almost to the day here. And I was looking out, and I saw a large creature swimming in the water. Now, I'm an experienced outdoorsman, and I know the creatures that live around here. And this thing was big. It was probably about 5 football fields away from me and 300 feet lower than I was. And I could not figure out what it was. It was dark colored. It had dark fur. It was definitely not a fish or a bird of any kind. But it was huge. It was bigger than me. I'm 6'5". And I, as a soldier, I'm good at estimating size at distance. And there was some waterfowl on the lake surface. So I had a pretty good idea of how big it was, but I couldn't make out its details. And it was huge. It was bigger than me, but smaller than a car, dark in color, swimming almost in circles, sort of like patrolling the center of the lake. And I was watching it for, 5-10 minutes, and then it submerged. And it stayed underwater for about 5 minutes. And then it came back up. And I went through the inventory of all the large animals that live out here, and I could not figure out what it was. It was absolutely perplexing. I mean, we've got elk out here. They're probably the same, like elk can be 10 feet long and 1,100 pounds. It's about the size of the creature, but elk are two-tone, and they never submerge. So it couldn't have been an elk. Black bear is a possibility, but they're rarely bigger than I am, and they don't submerge for 5 minutes. And cougar, it kind of moved like a cat in the water, but cougars aren't that big, and their fur is never black. And so I just had to walk away with, I don't know what I just saw. Like, it was a complete mystery. And when I recognized that there were things happening that you couldn't easily put into a box, that sort of inspired me to think, if we do this reporting program, let's get the data, and see where it goes. And since then, I've had several other experiences. But so, I would say that I was open to these ideas, and hadn't had any big encounters until this one, at that point in my life, really. But yeah, and so that's kind of where it started.
The idea of going from skeptic to believer is always a tough one, because you're always skeptical of what you haven't seen with your own eyes. And once you actually take a look and see what's truly out there, it's fascinating and addicting. You get addicted to trying to figure out what it is, like with you with that giant black blob sighting, if I could call it that without sounding insultive. And James, for you, going from that skeptic to now a believer, now that you've heard many people's stories about this, how has it changed you as a person and even the people you employ?
Well, it turns out that for the employees, I'll answer that one first. It's their favorite part of working there. Everybody loves this program. And, at first, we got a lot of raised eyebrows and people weren't sure what we were up to. But now I'm incredibly well known in the gorge. And people will stop me in restaurants or at the post office or in the grocery store to tell me their stories. And, that right there is incredibly joyful. And like you said at the beginning, I am less, I don't claim to be a scientist. I'm less interested in proving these things, but more interested in, validating the witnesses and, gaining a greater understanding of the world around us. So like I said, we had many Sasquatch stories and this was evolving. And then one night a guy came in. And he had been a friend of my mother-in-law, or his family knew my mother-in-law, and she had helped him out in a couple of ways. So kind of a friend of the family. And it took him 45 minutes to work up the courage to tell me this story. But he said, I had this astonishing encounter out by Buck Creek, James. That's about 3-4 miles from my store. And he was out there orienteering. His compass started acting strange. That in and of itself is not a big deal. The gorge is a huge electromagnetic anomaly, and even government maps say your compass readings will be off in the area. But he said he came upon a creature. It was an enormous black cat sitting on the other side of Buck Creek from him. And when I heard just that first sentence, I knew that something was strange here. And he said that, he watched it for about 5 minutes. Now, I don't know if you have ever encountered cougars. There's a couple of things about his story already that are not adding up for me. Like, I'm thinking there's something extraordinary going on here. He said that this cat had standing 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder. So let's go through the list. There's no such thing as black cougars according to mainstream science. When they express their melanin, they go from a tawny color to a more reddish color. But science doesn't recognize a black cougar in any shape or form. Number 2, it's not afraid of humans. And most cougars will abandon a fresh kill at the sound of human voices. In fact, if you play talk radio, they'll skedaddle. And so this thing seemed unafraid of a human being. And it was 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder. Now, that's bigger than the biggest cat alive today, Siberian tiger. And so right there, I thought, wow, this is a remarkable tale. And so he described it in a little more detail to me, told me about, how he was feeling during the encounter. And then he said, and the strangest thing, James, was that it had a face that looked like a monkey. And when I heard that, I had to control myself, because that just sounds so outlandish. Like, there's no way a cat could have a face that looks like a monkey. It seems genetically impossible to me. But, my dedication to treating people with dignity and respect and allowing myself a moment to not know really kind of was the right response in that moment. And he said, to be a little more specific, it had a flattened snout. So, normally like a cat will have a longer nose. This thing was flatter, and it had intelligent ape-like eyes and some other primate-like features to it. And I thought, wow, that's remarkable. So the next day, I went to talk to my employees, and we always chat about the stories that we've heard. And I said, guys, I got a really interesting one last night. And I was talking to one of my employees named Missy, and Missy's a sweet, sweet woman. She, is really honest. And as I was describing this creature, she started shaking, like visibly trembling. And I thought, what's going on, Missy? Like, why are you having such a strong emotional reaction? And she said, James, I saw that thing myself when I was driving through Klickitat Canyon one morning at dawn. She saw an enormous black cat moving like a cat, feline body structure, that sort of fluid kind of movement that cats make. And it was enormous. And she was so stunned by it that she stopped her car and watched it for several minutes. Now, she didn't get a look at its face, but it was definitely a big black cat, no question in her mind. And so eventually, it made its way into a place where she couldn't see it, and she carried on her way. And she told her family about it, and they all kind of laughed at her and said that she didn't see what she thought she saw. And then they said, well, what you probably saw was just a big black cow. And so, think about it. This is a grown woman, and they're trying to normalize her experience to the point where they're telling her that a large cat was actually a cow. That's like seeing a Lamborghini and your friends telling you it's a minivan. Like, there's really, any person who's spent any time on Earth knows the difference between those two animals. But what was striking to me about that was that the size of the creature that she described was as big as a cow. And so at that point, to me, these were two very credible witnesses, one a friend of the family who was reluctant to tell her story, and the other one was an employee that I knew and trusted. And since then, we have had over 130 reports of this enormous black cat. The reports go back all the way to 1968. There are some reports where they're either moving in pairs or sometimes they're seen with kittens or cubs. So we believe that there is a reproducing population in the area. About half of the reports that we received say, first of all the reports say black cat, feline body structure, very muscular and strong looking, long tail. And it's that long tail that tells us this is not a black bear of any kind, right? And then about half of the reports, go from bigger than the biggest crew you've ever seen to enormous, this 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder description. Some examples of that are a guy was driving in his Jeep Rubicon and its back was as tall as the hood of his Jeep. Another guy was driving a Ford Escort. It was as tall as his Ford Escort. Several people have said they've seen it leaping across the road, and as it stretched out, it stretches from the white line through the double yellow line to the white line. And again, it's only half of the reports that say that. And then there's this monkey face description. And honestly, only about 10% of the reports that we received, maybe even less than that, just truly a handful of them, describe this monkey-like face. And, I'll hear that story like it was the very first story I heard. And so it kind of colored all of my future interactions related to the cat. Sometimes we'll have long dry spells and no one has any descriptions of it with a monkey-like face. And then someone really credible, like the fire crew chief of a wildland firefighting team, said that her and her whole team saw it on the first day of a 3-day deployment between Adams and St. Helens. And they were terrified about what they would do if it showed up in their camp. And so that's a component of it. And sometimes that ape-like face says there's no fur on the face, but they all describe it as it's sort of shortened snout. It may be a genetic anomaly. It may be a different creature altogether. I really don't know how that fits in the story, but it's definitely part of the data set. And I'm reluctant to cast it aside and say that people aren't seeing what that they're reporting. So it's a really
James, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We are going to step out for a break at the bottom of the hour. What is this creature he is talking about? We're going to continue that right after this on Spaced Out Radio, and we're going to find out more about the sightings along the Columbia River Gorge. Does water have anything to do with it? We'll find out from James Szubski when we return on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we are clear. I just have a message for my YouTube audience listening in right now. I do know that the audio, for some reason, is not funneling through to you. I will try and get that fixed by Monday, depending on when my audio guy comes in. So if you have people coming in saying, no audio, there's no audio when we're going to break or coming out of break or whatever, just let them know we're having audio issues. And it is going through on the podcast side. I don't know why it isn't going through StreamYard, but we'll figure it out, and we'll get it cleaned up by Monday for sure. Zenzabil, how you doing? Good to see you. Thank you, James. Great show so far, my man.
My pleasure. Yeah, I'm so fascinated by this creature. I can't wait to share some of the theories about what it might be and how it got to be the way it is. There's some really interesting scientific data that we can look at that gives us the belief that this creature may be real and may be possible. So it'll be fun to get into that part of the story.
Oh, we'll get into it all. That's for sure. We're going to hit it home. I look forward to it. I love it when new creatures that I've never heard of come on this show, man. I do. It's fascinating to me. You know, just when you think you've heard it all, there's something new.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a prime example of what I think television is missing. Is they're so interested in the same locations every single time, telling the same story under a different title of show, that they don't really go looking for these small town monsters. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know, the thing about the gorge is we way over index on, you know, the population is maybe 70,000 people that live in this 80-mile stretch of the Columbia River. And like for just one guy and his store to have 400 reports in, you know, just a few years, that's remarkable, right?
Right.
But there is something about this place where we get not just the ape cat and Sasquatch and UFOs, like the big three. You know, of course, we hear lots of ghost stories, lots of glowing orb stories, but there's a ton of like one-off cryptids as well. And,
right,
you know, things that, you know, for me, they don't have a lot of additional data sets. Some of them have highly credible witnesses. So to me, like, okay, that makes sense that there's something happening here. But yeah, there's a whole slew of just inexplicable phenomenon that really make you question the whole mainstream narrative about a lot of different things.
I'm just going to test something out here. Let's see if you guys can hear this. Hold on, let me just put some audio up here.
One of your commenters
can you hear
said,
that now? James, can you hear that music?
I can't hear the music.
Yes or no? I'm sorry, yes or no?
No music.
Okay, hold on. See where else we can go here. Let's try this one. It's got to be one of these tabs here. Hold on. I'm just going to keep playing this until we can get it. That one? Shouldn't be that one. Let's try this one. Nope. Do. All right. I don't know why that's not working. Let's play with this for a second. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2 3 4. That should be there. And you can hear me now, right, James?
I can hear you.
Can you talk for a second?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk.
Okay. I can't hear you there.
Oh, you can't hear me.
Let's go back to that.
Can you hear me now?
And I'm not hearing you. So 1 second here, because I only got like 30 seconds, and apparently I've just screwed things up.
Oh, no.
Where were we here? Let's go. We're here. Can you say hi to me, James?
Hello, how you doing? This is
There we
James from
go.
Columbia River Gorge.
All right. We'll play with this later. We'll play with this later. Make sure it all works.
Mhm.
Get through the show. Hi, Bobbert. Hi, Desert Rat. How you doing? And let's see here. Big thank you to Kitty Caddywhack, Necessary Dialogue, B. Arthur, and Crazy Hot Morgan for the super chats. Here we go. Here we go with the second half hour Spaced Out Radio. What's happening along the Columbia River Gorge? There's monsters down there. My name is Dave Scott. We're going to find out from James Szubski here momentarily. But first, we want to remind all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We bring in James Szubski. He is from a great little store called, where is it here? Margie's Outdoor Store, margiesoutdoor.com, where he gets a lot of paranormal reports coming in there, especially about this Sasquatch cat. Is that the way we can describe it, James?
Well, we definitely get reports of Sasquatch. We've had equally, hundreds of Sasquatch reports as well, and people have brought in fur and everything else. And, I'm reluctant to call it a Sasquatch because many folks say that it looks just like a normal cat. It's just a handful of folks. One of your commenters mentioned that it may be a mutation, and that's a pretty interesting theory, and it may be correct as to why only a small percentage of these creatures have this flattened ape-like looking face. And, so we were talking about, what could this thing possibly be? Well, it turns out that although there are no living cats that big, there is a cat in the fossil record that lived alongside human beings here in Washington State 10,000 years ago. It's called the Panthera atrox, the North American lion. And this is a creature that lived during the Ice Age, and its fossils match the size and weight of the creature that people are reporting here. And so, that leads you to think, is this some kind of Ice Age holdout? Would be a remarkable tale because, that's 10,000 years of it being out there. But the most interesting thing about the Panthera atrox is that it is sexually dimorphic. And that means that the males are always bigger than the females. So in any given population, you would expect to have the reports come back with, 50% are large and 50% are the supersize. So an interesting scientific validation that cats that large are genetically possible, and they actually lived alongside human beings here in the gorge during the Ice Age. But that's not my favorite theory. And my favorite theory is that these are creatures that escaped from the animal testing laboratory at the Hanford nuclear site just upriver from us during their Cold War experiments that they were doing out there. And shockingly, this may be the most rational explanation for why these cats are, we have so many reports. And like I said, we have reports from senior law enforcement officials. We have reports from local leaders. This is, I will pull up in my rig. My vehicle is a 4x4 kind of souped up for paranormal investigation in the gorge. And it's got big logos with the cat on it. People ask me about it all the time. And I'll pull up and they'll say, maybe I'm getting my tires changed out, and the gal behind the counter say, "What's up with your car?" And I'll tell her, and she says, "I saw that cat when I was 12 years old out over in Doofer." And so we get people organically coming in and telling us about this thing. Now, here's the interesting thing. So upriver from us is this Hanford nuclear site. It is North America's biggest Superfund cleanup site. It was a part of the Manhattan Project. And so in a big part of where we created the plutonium for the atomic bombs that we created during the Cold War. In fact, its nickname is the Apocalypse Factory because they forged enough plutonium at the reactors at Hanford to build 60,000 nuclear weapons. So this place, yeah, it's crazy. And I knew a little bit about it. And I thought, maybe these creatures had, gotten involved with some of the nuclear waste out there, some of the chemical waste out there, and that induced these mutations. And so I was doing some research, and I came across a story of a railroad boxcar buried in the desert out on the Hanford site. It's a 600 square mile area. It's right along the Columbia. And inside of this boxcar, they found the half-burned radioactive carcasses of animals. It was packed with them. And that really got me headed down a research path. I was like, what in the heck is going on? Why are they burying boxcars full of half-burned radioactive animal carcasses? Well, it turns out that they had an extensive animal testing laboratory out there. So Hanford got spun up with the Manhattan Project. Down in Los Alamos, you have Oppenheimer with the physicist, and they're designing the bomb. But Hanford was where they built the world's first nuclear reactor. And they forged plutonium for the first time. It was creating the fuel for the atomic weapons. There's some really interesting stories how before anyone, even the vice president of the United States, knew what Hanford was up to, that Navy fighter planes are getting scrambled to intercept glowing orange objects over them, some as big as 3 aircraft carriers combined. That's a whole nother story. But this whole thing about this animal testing laboratory really is fascinating. Back in the 80s, Hanford got shut down. The national parks actually took it over, and they did a bunch of interviews with the people who worked there. And there's this whole archive, oral history archive, that I've been researching to figure out what the heck were they doing. Well, it turns out that during World War II, they're terrified the Nazis are going to unlock the secrets of the atom. Everyone understands the bomb, but the Nazis are involved in all these super animal programs and super soldier programs. The Soviets are trying to create human-Z super soldiers by combining humans and chimpanzees. So that's the context of the birth of the atomic era. And all of these different groups we know that radiation induces mutations in the 1930s and 1940s. We don't know how or to what extent. And so when they spin up Hanford, they have an animal testing program from day one. And the guy that they picked to run it is a guy named Dr. Donald Lawrenson. And he was a professor at the University of Washington. His only academic achievement was that he had actually created a super animal. It's called the Donaldson super trout. And this creature is 8 times larger and stronger than a normal trout. It reaches sexual maturity in half the time. It can swim in fresh water and salt water, and it's super strong and survivable. It's still alive today. They stock fisheries with it. So during the World War II, he's doing all these tests. Then we drop the bombs, we win the war, Hanford becomes public, and then the Soviets start scooping up Nazi scientists. So we start scooping up Nazi scientists. The Cold War blossoms, and then they lock Hanford down again. Donaldson winds up going to the South Pacific, part of Bikini Atoll and disastrous Castle Bravo test down there. And a new guy comes in named Bill Baer. And I've listened to hours and hours of interviews with this guy. He's in charge of the life sciences program out there. And they're doing crazy experiments. This testing facility grows to where it can house 1,000 large animals at a time. And they're trying to figure out stuff like if cows eat grass with fallout on it, can you still eat their meat or drink their milk? Really critical civil information for a nuclear war type stuff. Like what happens to our food chain and our food supplies during a nuclear war or fallout or atomic blast, that kind of stuff. But then he starts telling stories about how they were doing these bizarre radiation experiments on apex predators. He tells this story in 3 different interviews of how they had a large collection, like 20 to 30 alligators, and they were irradiating them. In one of the interviews, he actually holds up a picture of the device that they used to irradiate the alligators, and there's an alligator in it. And so they're doing these experiments on these gators. Then one night, 6 of these experimental apex predators outsmart the scientists and escape into the Columbia River. And so these creatures are swimming around out there, and it is a code red moment at the site because one of these gators had escaped earlier and was caught by a fisherman who stuffed it and put it in a sporting goods store, and that thing was still radioactive, and so they had to go in with hazmat suits and pull it out. And they knew that, man, if there's 6 of them out there, somebody local is going to find these things, and if we don't put out press releases, we're going to be cooked. So there's this corroborating historical documentation about this moment in time when these alligators escaped and they're in the river. They get a atomic security team, and they go out daily for 6 months to try to hunt down these gators. And after 6 months, they have only killed and captured 4 of them. And by January, they say, well, they're probably not going to survive the winter, so we can call off the hunt. Right? Like, we've tried for 6 months, we're not going to catch them. But remember, these creatures are swimming in the hot effluvium flowing out of nuclear reactors and back into the Columbia River. So in these interviews, Bear says, I was getting calls into the 80s about fish and wildlife guys asking me if I knew anything about alligators in the Columbia, and I just told him no and hung up on him. And he laughs about it like it's a hilarious moment of his career back in the day. And so it's really clear, uncontested historical information that at Hanford, the animal testing program was experimenting on apex predators who escaped and they couldn't recapture. So what does that have to do with big cats? Well, before I tell you about what it has to do with the cats, I have to tell you a little about dolphins. So since the 1950s, the U.S. government has used dolphins to guard some of our most sensitive nuclear sites. The reason why is that one of the most difficult security challenges, if your nuclear site is on a waterway and the Columbia is on 45 miles of the river, is that if you have a Soviet scuba diver coming in, especially at night, there's no way to tell. Sonar, if you're using that, it can't tell the difference between a sea lion or a tuna or a Soviet diver, but you can train a dolphin to tell the difference. And they would rig the dolphins up with this special apparatus on their snouts. It was like a grabber claw, and they would teach the dolphin to identify divers and then ram into that diver, and this claw would snap down on him. A balloon would inflate and bring that diver to the surface, and the atomic security forces would then scoop him up and get any intel they could from him. So if your job is securing the Hanford nuclear site, and remember, this is our number one most important nuclear site, you've got this big security problem. You've got this 45 miles of the river, which is 90 miles of river coastline that you have to guard. Super difficult. You're absolutely going to be aware of the dolphin security program because it is a gigantic success and it is working. You'd love to bring those dolphins into the Columbia, but you can't because dolphins only operate in salt water. Columbia's freshwater. So you're going to ask yourself the first question, can we get an animal to do this? What is the world's best riverine hunter? You might try alligators. That would be a pretty good pick. But you would absolutely look at black jaguars. Jaguars are the apex predators of the Pantanal rivers down in Central and South America. These cats can hold their breath for 15 minutes. They can eat underwater. They can swim a kilometer in the open ocean. Pound for pound, they're the strongest of the big cats. They can kill alligators with a single bite to the back of the head. They have night vision that's 6 times better than a human being, and they always instinctively drag their prey to shore. So this would be the perfect base animal for a sentinel program where you're trying to modify and create a creature that can guard your nuclear facility. And so you have to remember at this time, this is when the first liger is born in captivity in America back in the 1950s and 60s. And so the idea of interbreeding cats is becoming part of the scientific understanding. Right now up in Canada, there's the Bear Creek Sanctuary, and they had a jaguar and a lion living in captivity together. Apparently they loved each other very much, and they had 2 babies. And one of them is this enormous black lion. The thing, when it stands up, is taller than me. And so it's clear that it's possible to genetically manipulate through interbreeding and all kinds of other things, really, really big black cats. What we think happened was that they were doing experiments. They were trying to create a sentinel creature using a black jaguar as a base. Those creatures, just like the alligators, outsmarted the scientists and then escaped into the wilds of the Columbia River Gorge area. And if you look at where Hanford is situated, if you go north, east, or south of there, it's just this, sage scrubland desert, really difficult terrain, not very life supporting. But if you head west into Klickitat County, where all these reports are happening, Klickitat County and Skamania County, this is an area that is just packed with prey animals and habitat and caves, and exactly the kind of place where a population of large black cats could survive. And so, that is the most rational explanation why we have over 130 reports of these gigantic cats, some of them apparently with mutations, that are creeping around the Columbia River Gorge.
That is an incredible history lesson on this, and it makes sense. Now, pardon my geography here, okay, because I've driven the I-5 a number of times down to California. Is this the same place you're talking about where the giant silos are, right, and the I-5 kind of runs right through it?
No, so I-5 is sort of at the western edge of the state, Washington State, and we are east of all that. And so when you drive through Portland, there's the big river that you go over, and we're about an hour east of that. The gorge is stunning. Like, the river is almost at sea level, and then within half a mile you can be at 3,000 feet. Like, there are these huge, rock wall.
I got the two sites confused then, but thank you for clarifying that. The idea that many people are having these sightings, have you ever talked to anybody who worked at the nuclear facility about this animal testing or genetics modification?
I actually met the son of the man who retrieved the alligator from the sporting goods store. And so, the people still live here. In fact, Hanford, they were doing experiments. There's this really infamous experiment called the Green Run, where they took the filters off the stacks and irradiated a 200 square mile area around the site and didn't tell the population, and then secretly studied their health effects for decades. They would go out and do these intentional releases of radiation, and then they would check on ranchers' animals. A lot of the stories of men in black, going in and doing cattle mutilations, come from literally the Hanford scientists going out and covertly taking samples. We still, to this day, have sheriff-verified cattle mutilations out here, where these creatures have surgically removed sex organs, eyeballs, lips, different things like that. They're oftentimes bloodless. Scavenger animals won't touch them. Frequently, they look like they've been dropped from a great height, and there's no blood around them. So, the amount of government weirdness that happens out here is still present today. In fact, the Pacific Northwest Laboratory, the national laboratory, is now at the site where Hanford was. There's this thing out there called the LIGO. It stands for the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. Basically, it's these two giant tubes that are 2 miles long, perpendicular to each other in the desert. They're these hypersensitive measuring devices. Their purpose is to detect anomalies in the space-time continuum. A week after they turned this thing on, the LIGO was detecting anomalies in the space-time continuum. So, when you talk about Stranger Things type of science experiments, this was a Department of Energy facility where they're doing crazy, crazy experiments. I've heard stories, these oral interviews of people there's explosions in the lab and there's purple flames, and other stories. There's literally, and I'm not making this up, the dude's boss was an actual Nazi, and they're doing dental implants on super strong, super smart macaque monkeys. So strong they can pull like a bolt, like an eye bolt out of a cement wall. And these creatures are outsmarting, the lab workers and, bonking them on the head with poles and knocking them out. It's just this crazy science fiction world. And you got to understand, we talked about those UFOs that are appearing over these nuclear sites at the very moment when the Trinity test is happening in July of 1945. But UFOs have been a part of the story of the gorge forever. The first sighting, the Kenneth Arnold sighting, private pilot flying through the Cascades, he sees 9 craft flying from Mount Rainier to Mount Adams, right in our backyard. And this, they look like saucers skipping on a lake, is what he said. And so this gets picked up by the media in June of 1947. And then a month later, there's the Roswell incident, and America's love affair with UFOs and aliens is born. But that literally happened right in our backyard. And today, there's a place out there called the East City Ranch. It stands for Enlightened Communication with Extraterrestrial Intelligence. That's just like 30 miles up the road from me. People come from all over the world to watch craft, lights, vehicles fly around that mountain. And some come as skeptics, many leave as believers. We have folks who live here that are not associated with that ranch in any way, and they see these things flying around the mountain frequently, oftentimes chased by aircraft in the U.S. military inventory. Like, this place is filled with just this richly layered, incredibly interesting, bizarre, high strangeness.
We have 3 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. James Szubski is our guest tonight from, if you want to check out his website, it's amazing, margiesoutdoor.com, margiesoutdoor.com. So make sure you check it on out. The reports people are making of these, how many reports of this cat-like creature are you getting per year?
Well, we've got about 130 now. So once Missy told me that she had seen it, I kind of said, wow, this is something I really want to double down on. And we have a radio advertising budget. And so we started putting out radio ads. Has anyone seen the cat? Come in and tell us about it. We put some signs up at some of the trailheads. And so we got a lot of reports right at that sort of at the beginning, within the first couple of years. We continue to get reports to this day. We had one just a few weeks ago about one drinking out of the river. And, I went and was talking to one of the local sheriffs about it. And I gave her a map that I had drawn that, shows the location of many of these different things. And she was like, cool story, bro. Great. And we're friendly, and she took that back to the station and she showed it to her patrol officers. And one of them said, oh my God, yeah, I've seen James's big black cat when I was hunting out by the Deschutes River. She unrolled the map that I gave her, and we had an icon for the ape cat right where his hunting grounds were. And so these reports, this is like a part of the landscape out here. And we hear a lot about them all the time.
Is there different seasons that people are seeing this?
It doesn't. We really don't have granular data enough. So the way that many of the reports, people will come in, we ask them to fill out a form. Sometimes they just want to talk to us, and we're fine with that. We have an online form where you can fill out reports. A lot of times people will come up to me in the street, like I said, and tell me their stories. Or, my car is really distinctive with these big logos on it and all this gear on it. And oftentimes I'll come to like a drive-through window for fast food, and they'll ask me about it, and then they'll tell me about an encounter they had. And so my data is not organized in a way that like is a scientific list of all the time of year and everything like that. A lot of it is anecdotal evidence. And so we are beginning to take it more seriously and start doing some investigations ourselves and really kind of dial in on what exactly is going on out here.
In your estimate, with 40 seconds to go, you believe that this is something that can be explained by the whole testing of genetics at the nuclear facility, or do you believe there is something supernatural going on?
Well, that's a strange thing. Some of the folks who believe in UFOs and aliens around Mount Adams talk about a race of feline humanoids. A little bit different. These are humans with the face of a cat. There are petroglyphs on the walls out here, and one of them is really striking. It's got a cat-like face with these wavy water lines. And there's a legend about these supernatural panther protectors called Meshepeshu that are described as black panthers with the face of a man. And so there are some spiritual or supernatural hintings that may be a part of what's going on out here. I kind of love that, we don't have an answer yet. I love that this is a mystery that has eluded concrete explanation. We do have some video of it, not great video.
Hold that thought. Let's talk about that when we return. James Szubski on Spaced Out Radio, the Columbia River Monsters. You can go to margiesoutdoor.com and check it on out. All right, my friend, we are clear. Quickly, hello to Good Morning Commonwealth Andrew. Richard Minnick, how are you? Get caught up in the chat room here. I have this thing where I have to say hello to everybody. All right, we're caught up. James, we got about 5.5 minutes. I'm going to put you in the green room. Be right back, okay?
Great.
Be right back, everybody. right. Here we go. Oob to Joe Spain, you've got monsters. And who else has dropped in here? You having fun yet, my friend?
I am. You?
Oh, this is a blast. I love shows like this. This type of topic just absolutely thrills me. I can guarantee this won't be your last time on this show. Pancho Zorch, how you doing? Thank you tonight to Deborah Rooney, Necessary Dialogue, B. Arthur for the golden chat, Michelle and Kitty for the super chats. Greatly appreciate the love and the support. Hi, Kimberly Burgess. How are you, my friend? Don't forget to shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag, so make sure you check it on out. Here comes hour number 2. The second hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. We appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hey, we want to say hello to everyone tuning us in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Umbracious. Umbracious is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night, right here on Spaced Out Radio. From a great little market called Margie's Outdoors.com, the website. From the Columbia Valley, we have James Szubski here. He's talking about this weird, strange, cat-like, Sasquatch-like creature. More cat than Sasquatch, but it may have a monkey face. This is so weird. I've never heard of this creature before, but James, through his community, has had a lot of reports on it. James, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been a great talk so far.
Has this creature ever been filmed?
You know, we have, so someone sent me a Facebook post of a woman who never even came into my store and said, hey, what do you think of this, James? And basically she is out with her, watering her plants, and she's just, you see this, like, you know, it's kind of a blob squatchy kind of thing, but it's definitely a black cat-like creature moving the tall grass, and she's describing it, and she's saying, what is this thing? It's huge. I know it's not a house cat, and it's not a cougar because it's black. It's got a long tail. It's as tall as the high grass. And so I can't show it to other people because I tried to contact her, and I think she wasn't sure what kind of a person I was. So she didn't respond. But yeah, so there's video of it like that. Sometimes we'll get other pictures of people having spotted cats. And so there is some video out there. And I think that, you know, there was a time when I was considering offering a reward, like a financial reward for people bringing in, you know, high quality video of it. But, you know, with AI these days, I think that videos almost become meaningless. Like, it proves nothing. And so, you know, I'm sort of having to reevaluate, like, what is the way that we would demonstrate that this creature is real? Now, for me, I've heard so many reports. I mean, when you think about like 400 reports in 4 years, that's almost like, you know, every 3 or 4 days, a new Scooby-Doo mystery walks through our door, and we get some kind of amazing story to interact with. But yeah, for me, there's no question that these creatures are real. So many credible witnesses. And I am having such a wonderful time interacting with people and connecting with them. And I know that no matter what I do, like even with Sasquatch, like the problem is not with the evidence, it's with the audience. Like, people have chosen to believe that this is a myth. And so no matter how compelling the evidence that you put in front of them is, they still won't believe. And I've realized that you really can't care about those people, and a little bit sad for them because they're missing out on, a world filled with wonder. So I guess that's a long way of saying, yes, there's some video of it. But I've kind of made peace with the fact that we're never going to get video that anymore with AI that people are going to believe as concrete proof that this thing exists. And I think that's really the value that you were talking about at the beginning of the show, where it's about the experiencers. It's about connecting with people. It's about these human interactions and encountering mystery and trying to make sense of that in your life.
Now, here's one of the things that I wanted to ask you about this, because down on the Louisiana-Texas border, where the Tiger King used to live, before his compound got busted, he allegedly actually released, over 24 tigers into the wild. And in the United States, there are, it's not illegal to own exotic pets in many states. How do we know that this isn't some sort of exotic pet that may have been released out to the wild?
Well, I'd say the leading theory is exactly that it's an exotic pet on steroids from the nuclear animal testing laboratory. Like, that's the leading theory, is that it is some kind of animal, like a traditional jaguar that was released. Here's the remarkable thing. So science says there's no such thing as black cougars in the Pacific Northwest. In fact, it doesn't recognize any black cats living out here. Our reports go back to 1968. We have reports of them with kittens and cubs. There's clearly a reproducing population out here. Even if it is an escaped jaguar, and it's not huge, and all those other parts of the reports are mistaken or incorrect or misreported or whatever, the fact that there's a population of large black cats living in the Columbia River Gorge area is world news. Basically, what that means is there is large mammals, big, majestic creatures living in a place where science doesn't recognize them. And, or even if they're black cougars, like any version of the story where it's verified that these things are living out here is remarkable. And I think a part of the problem with Bigfoot is that he's got a branding problem. Like, on any given day, 70% of the people that you mentioned Bigfoot to are automatically going to assume it's a mythical hoax, right? And so he's got all this baggage associated with him. There's no baggage with these giant black cats. And so if you can prove, if you can demonstrate that these things are out here, it opens the door for the idea that, yes, large mammals can exist in the vast wilderness areas of America and still not be recognized. Gorillas, there were reports of gorillas from 2,500 years ago during Roman times. And it wasn't until 100 years ago that science decreed that they were actually an extant living creature. Same thing goes with, a platypus. They even dissected platypus remains in the 1800s and determined it was a clever hoax. Or Komodo dragons are another example where scientists said, oh, it's just the foolish fantasies of Indonesian fishermen, primitive minds, until a scientific expedition went out and found them. And so I find it so exciting that there may be still things out there that we don't know. People don't realize that science, mainstream science, is always the last to know. The first to know are going to be everyday folks like you and I going out into the field and having extraordinary experiences. It takes a long time for science to catch up with that kind of stuff. So don't ever look to science as the leading indicator of truth. It is a trailing, way, 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 way back indicator of truth. You have to, have these initial reports. You have to have a scientist get excited about it. He needs to go out into the field. He needs to confirm it. And then even after he has evidence, then it needs to get debated. And then probably some people in the scientific community who've got a problem with it need to die, literally just die off before their influence over the community can be softened enough that it's recognized as real. And to me, that's really exciting. And it gives a place for the citizen scientists to step forward and have confidence in the sovereignty of their own experiences, what they're witnessing in the field. And that's what I love about our program, is that we're a place where we validate you, and we listen to you, and we entertain the idea that what you have experienced is real.
Two-part question here. Are there researchers out there looking for this creature in your area, number one? And number two, has this creature ever been known to attack people, or is it always seen at a distance?
So the first answer is mostly because I keep on talking about it on shows like yours. We're starting to get some research teams come out and try to find the creature. There's a television show that's going to come out later this month, and they're going to do it. I don't think that they're going to have much success. You know, the Panthera atrox, that Ice Age American lion, its olfactory cavity was so large that they believe it could smell things from 2 miles away. And so, like, if it didn't want to be seen, it would know that you were coming. But that's not to say that, you know, we have reports of people saying it wanders through our orchard all the time and it brings its young in here, you know. So, like, we hear these reports. And that sort of leads into the second question. Of those 130 reports, we have no reports of hostile encounters. Oftentimes, people will say that it observed me, but it didn't make any aggressive movements. Like, obviously, if you saw a 5-foot tall giant black cat, it would be a scary moment, but there's never a moment when it has attacked anyone. And so that's a really curious thing. It may be that if these things were sentinel creatures, a sentinel creature would not train, they wouldn't train it to kill humans instantly. Like, they would be trained to, you know, attack or do whatever they wanted it to do upon command, but to mostly be docile around humans. You don't want a killing machine on a leash. Like, you need that thing to be controllable. And so there's some circumstantial evidence that this is a creature that's familiar with humans and not afraid of humans. So the answer is we've had no hostile encounters. Now, that is not to say, though, there are places in the gorge, like this place called Broke Leg Barrows, which is this crazy magnetic anomaly. It's like a big lava bed where dozens of people have gone missing. And there could be a number of reasons for that, including they got eaten by a big cat. We won't know. And what's challenging is that the kill pattern, like if it's killing livestock or anything else, would be really, really similar to a cougar. And so hard to, you know, look at a carcass of an animal or something like that and know what kind of cat killed it.
I love it. I love it. James Szubski is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. You can find his website, margiesoutdoor.com. And in that area where people have seen this, my final question on this, because I do want to move on to other creatures that you're looking for there. Has anybody ever seen it do anything woo? Has it disappeared right in front of their eyes? Has it vanished? Has it changed shape? Anything like that?
Well, there's one really curious report where a woman, her sister, and her sister's boyfriend were walking on a trail. They saw a creature drinking out of like a puddle, and it looked at them, and it had a feline body and this sort of ape-like face with no fur on it. And then it stood up and ran away on 2 legs. And so that's a singular report. And so that one is really creepy to me. There are other reports of people feeling like they're in the presence of something unusual, and, you know, and so that's a part of it. But mostly it sounds like what we're hearing is that so far it's exhibiting the characteristics of a biological creature. That's not always the case with the Sasquatch sightings we have, though. And that's a whole different topic that's fascinating to me, related to some of the phenomenon here on those big creatures.
How many Sasquatch reports are you getting in comparison?
You know, because we actively ask for the black cat reports, even with that, our Sasquatch reports are probably a little bit higher. So I would say our Sasquatch reports are probably somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 140 or something like that. But it's so common for people to have a Sasquatch experience out here. Like when my wife and I first moved down here, we were stunned. It seemed like everyone we met either had a Sasquatch encounter or knew someone who had one. And so it's like about as common as seeing a bear. Like it's an elusive creature. Not everyone sees them every time you're in the wilderness, but many, many people see them. Some people see them multiple times. There's one guy who comes in, he's brought hair samples and everything else. He lives in this area we call Monster Mountain because there are so many sightings out there. It's actually the Monte Cristo Natural Preserve, a ridgeline, sort of by the White Salmon River and by Buck Creek. And he has seen all colors of Sasquatch. He has seen red, white, brown, black, you name it. He says that the younger ones look more furry and the older ones look more hairy. He's heard them give birth. He's seen them pregnant. One night he saw 14 of them on his property at one time, sort of lining up to cross the road. Like they had this sort of plan where it seemed like one was sort of guarding the road and ushering the others through, and they were sort of distributed out in a line. And so, I asked this guy, and he, like I said, he's brought in hair samples. He's had so many encounters on his property that to him, it's just like part of the landscape there. And I said, so in your mind, is this a biological creature or is this something else? No, it's definitely an animal. But they do seem to have the ability to do limited teleportation. And I was like, what do you mean? Like that's not normal animal behavior. And it's, what is that? And he said, well, it seems like when they're walking away from you, like they can do like these 50-yard leaps in a second. And so like they'll be, somehow able to move much, much faster. We also have many, many reports where glowing orb phenomenon is present before, during, or after the experience. Oftentimes people will see glowing orbs and then have a vocalization encounter. Other people will see the orbs after Sasquatches have left their campsite or where they were hiking. And these orbs are really also incredibly common out here. I've actually taken a picture of one, and it's remarkable. They're like, they look like ball lightning, if you know what that looks like. But so many people have seen them out here. Again, it's one of our top reported type of phenomenon. Sometimes they're small, look like the size of like softballs or volleyballs. Multiple ones floating around at a time, like up to 12. Sometimes they're singular. We had one report where a guy was driving down Highway 84 on the Oregon side of the river, and he saw one sort of flying over the surface of the river. There was an Oregon State Patrol car next to him, and they were both looking at each other like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? They're like nodding at each other through the windows of the cars. And then he observed it dive into the water, and he could see its light glowing under the water of the river. So that's, I guess it would be a transmedium craft experience. And so that's one flavor of UFO we have out here. We have multiple reports of triangular UFOs. Oftentimes those appear to be cloaked, like they're bending starlight or the sunset around them. Tic-tac shaped UFOs, we have pictures of those. So yeah, there's just this wild array of different phenomena that is going on out here. And again, sometimes they're associated with creatures like Bigfoot, other times not.
The encounters people are having, are they quite docile? Up here in British Columbia, we, and I think it's for the entire Pacific Northwest, we don't hear a lot of violent cases of Sasquatch as, say, we do in the southwest or south central part of the United States, even on the East Coast around Florida. Are your sightings and creatures that they're just kind of wandering around doing their thing?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. I'm sort of going through in my mind all of them, and there aren't any that are like horror stories. There was this one event on Mount St. Helens, the Battle of Ape Canyon, where miners were shooting at them, and they were reaching, pounding on the cabin they were in and stuff like that. That was, over 100 years ago. But in my store, we don't have any reports that I can think of where there was some kind of overt hostility going on. Yeah, a lot of times it's, there was a really interesting story when people interact with juveniles. There was a kid who lives literally, his apartment was just maybe a mile and a half from the store. And he was interacting with a juvenile Sasquatch in this sort of abandoned shack that was in the trees. And it was a relationship that spanned a couple of weeks, and they were trading bowls and doing different, gift giving type of things. And then it would show up, and I wouldn't say they were playing with each other, but they were sort of interacting with each other and curious about each other. And we get stories like that. There's this area called Broke Lake Burrows. It's an old lava bed, really difficult terrain. I've been a professional land navigator in life and death situations since I was 19 years old with the military, and then with search and rescue and firefighting and all that. And I'm very competent in the wilderness. This place is the most terrifying terrain I've ever been in. Just how dangerous it can be, especially if you're out there alone. Compasses don't work. Cell phones don't work. It's there's these jagged rocks with these micro canyons, like collapsed lava tube caves. Really a difficult place. Very intriguing though. I was out there once and flying my drone, and I had a time and space displacement event where, for a guy like me, like I'm the kind of person that you call when someone else is lost in the woods and needs to be found. So I really, and I don't want to brag, but I am very, very competent, and I have an excellent mind for recognizing places. I had flown my drone up and down this trench area. Imagine jagged rocks and moss and sort of stunted moss-covered trees. And my drone hit a branch and crashed to the south end of this trench. And so then I picked it up, and then I walked to the north end of the trench, about 100 yards, and then I took a 90-degree turn west, deeper into the lava bed. I thought I had traveled 800 yards. And then I found another really cool trench. So I pulled out the drone and started flying another drone mission to get some footage of it. And I looked around over my shoulder, and I could see my vehicle. And I was waking up from a dream, I realized that I was actually back where I had crashed the drone the first time, 900 yards away from where I thought I was. Now, for a professional land navigator, this was wildly disorienting. Like if anyone else told you they get lost in the woods, okay, well, whatever. But literally, this is what I do when I am rescuing people, is I have to have complete situational awareness. And the idea that not only would I not be where I thought I was, because when you're land navigating at a professional level, you're doing pace counts and keeping track of the sun and dropping landmarks. There's a whole set of things that you're doing in the background when you're traveling through a wilderness area, so you don't get lost. And the idea that not only was I not at all where I thought I was, but I didn't even recognize a place that I had just been. What I thought was 15 minutes ago turned out to be 2 hours ago. So my first emotion was, what the hell just happened? This is unbelievable. And then my second emotion was, like this place is so vast. It's an area the size of the island of Manhattan in New York. If you wanted to, you could hide 6 or 7 Ewok villages of Sasquatch in here and no one would ever know. Like there's no trails. No one, the local hunters avoid it. And I thought, if something didn't want me to go deeper into the lava bed that day, this was the most benevolent way to sort of bump me back to a place where I could easily see my car and get out without hurting myself. And yet seamlessly edit my memory so that I didn't know where I was. So, yeah.
James, I'm going to get you to hold that thought. When we come back, I want you to finish that story. I want you to take some audience questions because I know they're building up in our chat room. James Szubski, 1/2 hour more on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we are clear. Oh, God, I could listen to you for hours, man. Thank you for being such an amazing guest.
Oh, my pleasure. I love talking about this stuff.
Oh, me too. Me too. That's why I do it nightly.
So a couple of people have noted that several years ago, I wrote a book called Snoqualmie Strange, a Most Peculiar Hiking Guide. And that was when I was living up in the Seattle area. And it was a fantasy exercise. In that case, I took hikes that I loved and I imagined a supernatural world layered on top of it. And so you'd go on these hikes and you'd look at these things and it would tell you the actual history and then it would tell you my imagined history. And it was a delightful book. Eventually I took it off the shelves because some of the ways that I had portrayed the Native American culture there, they had told me wasn't the most respectful. And it was completely unintentional on my part, but I realized that book sales were less important to me than offending or bringing any kind of harm to these folks who I have immense respect for. So I thought that I had pulled it off the shelves. It looks like some people are finding it. But anyway, the book is not related to my experiences in the gorge, and it is intentionally an exercise in fantasy. So just to be clear on what that's about.
With your previous career being a search and rescue EMT and everything, we always talk a lot about safety in regards to being out in the woods. Mm-hmm. And, obviously you have to be prepared for all elements, but when it comes to animals and creatures in your area, what is your advice for it? I always say it's all about, know your sounds, know your creatures that are out there, and know your scat.
Yeah. And, in Washington State in the past 100 years, there've probably been 2 cougar attacks. So it's really uncommon. There are out here, we've got some areas with rattlesnakes. Some people get bites. I don't think there's any stories in the last 100 years of someone getting killed by a bear, and no wolf attack stories. Most people get hurt in the wilderness in 2 primary ways, like the body recovery missions that I've been on. It's either hypothermia or falling. And so be prepared for getting wet and being overnight, have the stuff to make a fire. Like, honestly, the true dangers are those 2 things. And so many people, like, we find their body and the last pictures are them at the edge of the thing they just fell off of. Right. And so that's where you really need to focus your awareness. Now, I don't want to dismiss the idea, like, yes, you can absolutely get attacked by animals. There's tragic stories, and getting attacked and living is almost as bad, as dying. I always carry bear spray with me. There are a few areas where I'll carry a sidearm, but not many. And really, the bear spray is an effective deterrent. The biggest thing is never get between a critter and her babies. Like, that is the best way to get yourself hurt, is messing with animals young. So
very true. Very true. Yeah, in our area where we research, we have grizzly bears, black bears,
grizzlies lions. Are a different story. Yeah, grizzlies are a huge story, and in that case I'd probably carry a 454 Casull rifle or handgun.
We don't go normally. Like, I'm a firm believer that Sasquatch is very, very understanding that guns are bad in the forest. Guns lead to, but in our area, we have to go in armed.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice because of the wolf packs, the mountain lions. Like, our first night of research that we did, we had our pointy sticks packed up, and literally 3 minutes later, I saw a cougar run across the trail, and it was only maybe 60 to 100 feet from us.
Yeah. Yeah. You're always putting yourself in danger. But again, I've been on scores of search and rescue missions, and rarely does it involve an animal attack. True. You know what I mean?
Hold that thought. Big thank you to Deborah Rooney, Kitty Caddywhack, Necessary Dialogue, Michelle, and the Golden B. Arthur for the super chats tonight. Greatly appreciate the love. Remember, you can get our great looking swag, because we do not have ugly swag, at our Spaced Out Radio store on our website. Make sure you check it on out. We'd appreciate it. And then send us a picture with you wearing it. How do you do SOR? Let me know. Here we go with the next half hour. All right, it's time for the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hey, we want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, our archives are always free on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Final time tonight, we say hi to James Szubski. He is a great storyteller after collecting hundreds of stories from his area along the Columbia River Gorge. His website, margiesoutdoor.com, where if you're in the area, you can file your own report right in store to a person. Not a phone line, not a voice recorder, a person. James, welcome back.
My pleasure to be here.
You were telling a Sasquatch story right before the break.
Well, it might be a Sasquatch story. It was definitely a time and space displacement story, and particularly unusual because of my skill and experience of traveling wilderness areas. But the reason why I think it might be a Sasquatch story is that we get many, many reports like that where people are traveling through the woods and they'll think they're hours away from their car, and then they'll come to their senses and realize that they're just 5 minutes away, and they will have no memory of what should have been 3 or 4 hours of travel. And that happens a lot on that Monster Mountain area, the Monte Cristo Range. And so there seems to be some type of phenomenon where, and again, these are areas where there's just packed with Sasquatch sightings. Again and again, like just this summer, we've had several bloggers come out and camp in that area and have vocalizations and things like that. And I think that there may be something to do with, so our culture sort of evolved with this idea of manipulating material components, and mechanical things to gain advantage. It may be possible that this lineage of primates develop more mental abilities and the ability to influence the mind of others at a distance. Just think of it as a different kind of technology, and that's what they focused on. And so with that, you don't need to have a bunch of artifacts associated with these creatures if they're able to manipulate minds. And like I said, that experience that I had, I know how to travel in the woods, and I know what it's like to remember or to travel through areas. And something happened to me that completely befuddled my mind. And the experience of when it was over was the exact experience of waking up from a dream and that sort of fogginess and trying to figure out what you are. And we get that's reported commonly. I'd say we probably have 20 or 30 reports of that in the store. And so I feel like there's something about that, that is definitely associated with the Sasquatch phenomenon. It may be associated with other things as well.
Do you think there are portals or different dimensions showing up in your area?
We've had people explicitly say that they saw a portal. And in fact, on Mount Adams, the folks at East City Ranch talk about this triangular shaped portal that appears on the side of the mountain. They've had remote viewers look at it. They say that it is a gateway, a stargate to a higher dimension that's guarded by angelic beings. So the East City folks have got their whole program up there, and I visited there, and I've met with James Gilliland, who's the owner and proprietor of that. He's a really sweet man. But I can't say that I'm an expert on what they encounter and their theories about what it is. But in the store, we've had reports of a guy said he was driving through the desert area. He saw what he thought were Indian casino lights. When he got close to it, he realized it was, in fact, a portal. People often describe these as usually a circular form floating midair, where what's behind that shape looks different than what's behind everything else. It's different than the normal background. And this gentleman said that he saw a black cube come out of this portal and fly down the gorge. We've had other reports of portals in similar areas, oftentimes along roadways, which makes sense because that's where people mostly are. But yeah, the Mount Adams is definitely many reports of portals in that area as well. By many, probably 10 or 15, I'd say.
Friend of mine who used to be on our show, Jackie Harmon, she was up at Mount Adams with Lee Strauss, another good friend and one of our podcast hosts on the show here. And they were there last summer. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of this, where in their tent, she was actually groped by a Sasquatch at night.
Wow.
Where they could hear them all around, and they decided, well, let's just go to bed, see what happens. And they had one of those floating tents that you tie in between the trees. And all of a sudden, one part of the night, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, Jackie felt the hand of a Sasquatch grab her ankle through the tent, then up to her calf, and then her thigh, and then her butt, and then her back, and then her shoulder. And when it went for her head, that's when she screamed, because she didn't know what was going to happen, and the creature ran off.
Yeah. And you hear these stories, and for many folks, they're so far removed from the reality that they experience every day that they can't possibly be true. And for me, after talking to 400 people, and some of these stories are like, no one's going to make a mini series out of the day that you were driving your ATV, the cat jumped across the trail, scared the crap out of you, and you never saw it again. Like, that is not anything that, like, you come to understand pretty quickly when people are pulling your leg or having fun, and when they had a genuine experience that they're trying to make sense of. And, an encounter like that, where she's actually getting groped, as a physical contact, you never forget that, and that's why, to me, it's so important to believe the witness, acknowledge the reality of their experience. It's the choices are you believe them and give them comfort, or they've lied to you and you were authentic in your response to them. And in that interchange, who's the loser? The person who was authentic and genuine in the listening, or the person who was intentionally misleading? And so for me, there's really no other response to those kind of moments than believing the witness with and being compassionate about how difficult it is to integrate an experience like that into the world that you thought you knew.
Let's go to audience questions here. Let's start off with Benno here. Could these orbs you talked about earlier in the show be irradiating the animals, causing the big cats?
That's a theory that I haven't heard before. The orbs seem to... We don't have any reports of radiation associated with the orbs themselves. The radiation sources that are known really come from the Hanford nuclear site. I don't have enough data to say whether the orbs are irradiating anything, but I do have data to say absolutely the Hanford site radioactively contaminated huge swaths of the Columbia River and many areas around the Hanford nuclear site.
All right, let's move to another one. Let's go over to Jules. Any vocalizations or scents or eye shine with this cat-like creature?
Oh, with a cat. So tons of vocalizations with Sasquatch. We do have one or two reports of, very deep growling noise associated with a cat. In fact, one guy who he was afraid that it was going after his goats, and he shot it with a 22. And he said it made a sound like a demon. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, I said, can you make that sound? And he said, no, I can't. But if you open up the gates to hell and poke a demon, I can tell you if that's what it sounded like. So when they are shot, they make it sound like a demon, apparently. But other than that, no. Eye shine, yes, we have had reports of that. A lot of the reports, again, come from people driving in vehicles. You have to understand that some of these areas are pretty remote, and there are thousands of miles of off-road, unpaved roads out here. And so when those headlights shine, that's part of some of the stories that we hear as well. Scents, I'm not remembering anything peculiar about scents related to the cat.
All right, let's move on to another one. Let's go to Paramarv. Can you tell us about that orb activity in the area, such as the big blue one from April 2022, pictured on your Facebook page?
Yeah, that was a remarkable encounter. So on the Facebook page, there is one picture that I took. There was this pencil-thin beam of light coming down from the sky. I was stopped at a place called the Spring Creek Hatchery, which is right on the river, probably 4 miles from the store. And I was so, I love taking pictures of the gorge. And this beam of light, pencil thin, just beaming straight down, was really interesting. And so I started taking pictures of it. And when I reviewed those pictures, in one of them, there is this bright blue orb. It's not perfectly circular. There's data inside the orb, and there's a glowing sort of aura around it. You can tell it is absolutely not a lens flare. Lens flares require a strong light source behind the flare. And in this case, you can see from the direction of this pencil thin beam of light that the light is coming from a different direction. Also, there's sort of the side of a mountain behind it. Clearly not headlights, because there are cars on the road and you can see their headlights. And also lens flares typically will be perfectly circular or have a hard edge, and they won't have information inside of it. So that is this orb, really remarkable to actually have captured it on film. My wife and I have seen these with our naked eyes driving on Highway 14. So Highway 14 is the main road that runs along the northern bank of the river, and Highway 84 is the Oregon side on the south bank of the river. And these orbs are frequently seen on Highway 14, especially there's an area where there are 4 tunnels or 5 tunnels. And it may have to do with piezoelectric activity, which is where rocks can actually form electrical charges and create these things. But again, we get reports of them all over the place. And so hard to say. But that's the story behind that picture on the Facebook page.
Let's go to another question here. This one is from Jose, who is asking, can these feline creatures be considered as cryptids, or just another species of existing cats, in your opinion?
So a cryptid is a creature currently not recognized by science. And these absolutely fall into the category of cryptid. Now, if we get evidence and, we were able to capture one or whatever, or find a carcass, then we could do DNA testing and determine if it's part of an extant cat. My guess is that these are genetic anomalies, that they're certainly different than the cougars that live here. And if their base stock was jaguar, they've been significantly modified to include this large size, and in some cases this face mutation, if that's in fact what it is.
How do you like to refer to it as?
Oh, it's a cryptid in my mind. In fact, the license plates on my 4x4 paranormal research vehicle say cryptid. And so I'm kind of all in on that one.
I love it. Let's go to Zenzabil. Has anybody tried to set up trail cams to catch pics of these creatures?
A lot of people have come into the store and said, oh yeah, we took a picture of that thing a long time ago, and then I'll never hear from again, which is part of the reason why I was considering offering a financial reward. But again, like with AI, you can make it absolutely perfect fake. Like you could take a picture of your backyard and then tell AI to put a picture of a black cat in it. And so I'm kind of philosophically moving away from the need to try to prove this to anyone else that these things exist. What I recommend is that you come to the gorge and see for yourself. Like this is an astonishing place, and I am a big proponent of people getting out and walking the land, like you're doing up there in Canada, being out in the wilderness, doing what humans do that AI and everything else can't, which is experience the world around us. To me, like this is one of the most fun and engaging and interesting reasons to be out there doing that. It's something that, I've done all my life with these different adventurous activities. But so the answer is, I would love them to. And if you have, please bring them into the store or submit them through our online portal. But that's becoming less and less of a focus for me because it would be impossible to say if it was faked or not.
What are your goals for this coming year and years to come? Is it just to collect the stories, or is it trying to paint more of a picture of what is truly out there in the weird and strange?
Right now, I'm actually in the process of writing a book about these experiences, but my overarching goal is to reawaken a sense of wonder within people. That's why I go on shows like yours, where you have people who are receptive to that kind of a message. There's so many things in our world, like what's real, what's not real. There's uncertainty. There's, all these disasters looming that could possibly wipe us all out, whether it's climate change or AI or war or whatever. And returning to this first person sensory experience, returning to a sense of wonder and curiosity. Like my goal is to inspire people to that, to get out and see for themselves, to walk the land. And if it takes these astonishing creatures that currently science hasn't caught up with yet to motivate you to do that, that's great. But whatever your excuse, like get out there and do the things that humans have done from the beginning, which is be the eyes of God looking at God. Like that's what we're here to do. And if I can inspire people to do that, like that is my number one pinnacle goal.
And it's fun too. Let's just be honest.
Exactly. Like it is endlessly fascinating, super engaging, reasons to buy gear. I mean, like there's all kinds of fun stuff that comes along with it.
Right? I mean, I could just imagine. Well, I do know a little bit of a feeling what it's like from what I do, not only with this show, but in the investigations that we're doing here. But I mean, to be able to have these type of conversations every day with people that you may never meet again, people who you may not ever have walk into your store again. I mean, what is that like to be able to just sit down for 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe with a coffee or a Coke or a bottle of water, and just listen to somebody and give them that time to tell their story? What does that mean to your clients?
Well, that's the hidden gem of this whole program. I had no idea when I got into it. There are people who they tell me their story and they're like, you are the first person who I felt has believed me. And we wind up with this really human interaction, this very tender connection. Sometimes we hug it out, and like, it's those moments, those connections when you've offered, like so many times this experience is so extraordinary. Their entire support group, their family, their friends have no frame of reference. They can't relate. And so you have nowhere to turn to. There's no one who will listen to you and believe you. And to have someone who's going to ask intelligent follow-up questions, be present, not try to convince you didn't see what you thought you saw, take in your information with a genuine interest. Like what that does for people is healing in many ways.
Yes.
And, to be present in that moment, human to human, Like, yeah, I'm sure people have made a fool of me. I'm sure people have, told me tall tales or exaggerated their things. And that's no harm, no foul. I mean, it doesn't harm me to be compassionate to another human being. And even if my ego can take the hit if they told me an untruth. And a lot of times I won't go out on a limb unless I have a pattern of data or a highly credible witness. And so that's what's exciting with this ApeCat is there's so many witnesses, so many different data points. You can look at patterns and say, yeah, this seems like this something that's real.
And the power of words when you say, I believe you, is so strong. That person may have been carrying that story for decades and has felt like a
Explicitly,
fool. Has felt like a fool for decades because people laughed at them or told them what they saw, like you said, was swamp gas or clouds or whatever it may be. And yet here you are saying, I believe you. The tension that must relieve off of somebody's shoulders is immense.
well, think of my employee Missy, who was literally trembling, shaking when someone was validating her experience that her entire support group had denied was and told her wasn't real. Like, yes, it is profound, and to be there for people, to help lift the stigma of talking about these unusual things, that feels like work worth doing.
I want to have you on again so we could get really more into the portals and dimensions and what people are seeing moving in and out. For you, having this opportunity to talk to people daily, does anything catch you off guard anymore?
Yeah, like when you take that extreme stance of I'm going to believe the witness, and then you hear something like that you have no frame of reference for. Like, I've had people tell me I'm from another planetary system. And my initial response is like, and then I think, well, no, you have this commitment to believing the witness and treating them with dignity. So, what would it be like if they actually were? You know, what an amazing interaction if you could talk to someone from a different planetary system. So, what questions would you have in that moment? And so, there are times when I have to catch myself and say, okay, even though this is so far out of my frame of reference, wouldn't it be amazing if your story was true? And so then it's easy to say, wow, if that was true, what would I want to know? Like, what would I ask this person? And that's when that moment of like your reaction of this is no way, this is real, turns into the opportunity for inquisitive curiosity. And, for some people, you ask them those questions and they disappear. They're like, okay, well, I wasn't expecting someone to take me seriously, and now I don't have anything in the bag because I was kind of pulling your leg. But other times, it leads to like when someone told me that they saw a giant black cat with the face of the monkey, I was like, that is not possible. And yet here I am, 3-4 years later with 130 reports because I didn't immediately dismiss it as nonsense. And when I told my friends and family, they all had all the normalizing things that it could have been. It was a bear, it was a cat, it was, a dog, it was a cow, it was all these different things. But because I held a space where I didn't know what it was, it allowed other data points to come in. And now it looks like there's some kind of actual real phenomenon. That's what's exciting to me, is doing that kind of work. That's why it's valuable to suppress that initial disbelief response and come with humility and dignity.
James Szubski, I love the way you're doing things. Keep up the great work at maggiesoutdoors.com. We're going to bring him back on. We have to. Coming up next in hour 3, Swamp Dweller, then Little Timmy James. That was a brilliant show. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the community and bringing out those truths. And because I'm Canadian and part of the Commonwealth, happy Treason Day to you.
It's brutal. It's silly. I can't believe we're in the mess we're in. But
It happens.
like some shit is inevitable, and
Yep.
this seems like it may be one of those things. So
Oh, yeah. Enjoy your 4th of July long weekend, my friend. Wave
thank
your
you.
flag loud and proud. Because
All right.
I know even though Canadians are talking stupid right now, we still love you guys down there.
Well, thank you, and please forgive us for the idiot that we deal with.
Well, please forgive us for the idiot that we voted in, too. It goes both ways.
Seems like
All
it's
right, my
going
friend.
around.
You take care.
All right.
Bye bye. James Szubski, everybody. Great guy. We're going to bring him back. 100%. Bring him back. I'll be right back, everybody. right. Sorry about that. My allergies kicked in about 2 o'clock in the morning last night. Little Timmy James in the background right now. You're not going to hear Swamp Dweller due to the audio issue. I apologize, but I'll get it all sorted out by Monday. Here we go. Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Umbracious. Umbracious is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. I had a nearly identical story happen to one that I heard on your channel, and felt it was important to relay my experience as well. There were many times in my life where I was staying in very unusual and creative places. From about the age of 22 to 24, I was living in a few different tents I had set up in the South Hills of San Jose, California. I stayed there for months at a time by myself because I enjoyed the freedom to do what I want and stay where I wanted. Within the amount of time, I had countless experiences with wildlife. I was camped too close to a water source. I basically set up camp right in the middle of Mother Nature's freeway. Almost every night, around midnight, a group of wild pigs would run down the hill. Some of them were enormous, and sometimes they would squeal and scream. When we were out there, and they were sniffing around the paper-thin tent, it was something terrifying. I also would hear deer, coyote, and have been stalked by a mountain lion at least 3 times. You will learn the natural sounds at night surprisingly fast, especially if you are in the same area for a long time. There was one night when I was sleeping, and was awoken by the sound of pigs coming down the hill. This time something was different. I'm a very light sleeper, and even though I was somewhat used to them, they would scare me when they got within 15 feet from my tent. But this time, I remember feeling relaxed. It was an unusual relax, though, because these things were closer than I was normally comfortable with them being. And surprisingly, the more relaxed I was feeling, the more tired I got. It almost felt like I was being put under before surgery, except I was still aware and had my senses. I heard what sounded like a pig sniffing, and felt one of them brush up against my tent, and then they seemed to leave. All except for one, that is. I couldn't tell if this one was from the back of the group or separate, and following not far behind the rest. In my sedated state, I was not concerned the way I normally would be. Then, the pig, or whatever it was, did something bizarre. It laid on me. I could feel its body heat, and feel its breathing, but I dared not move. Or perhaps I couldn't move from fear. This creature laid on my chest for what felt like multiple hours, but probably was not much more than just a few minutes. I felt to get off my chest at some point in time, and shortly after that the sedation wore off and I woke up. I don't know what to make of it, but someone out there in a past episode shared a similar experience on their channel, and perhaps others have too. If anyone knows what this may have been, please enlighten me in the comments down below.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another great story. If you want more just like that, head on over to YouTube, type in Swamp Dweller, hit subscribe, ring that bell. Thousands of stories there for free, just like you. Here we go with the UFO report. Little Timmy James in for the UFO report. It's always good to have you here, Tim. Thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's always good to be here. And I was just pretending that I was listening to the music. Just make it more lively.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm glad you could hear it.
Yep.
Glad you could hear it. Thank you very much.
No problem.
We try to
sir.
rock and roll here a little bit. We do.
Yeah.
But it's the abbreviated version of the UFO report. And we should put out that our next video in Secrets of the Forest is almost ready to go up. We will be launching it probably Sunday at about 6 p.m. Pacific, maybe a little bit earlier if we can. And that way you guys can watch some of the scariness that happens. And I will say this, without giving it away, there is a very amazing Estes method test that we did with Tim. Blindfolded, noise-canceling headphones on, and the voices are incredible. Absolutely incredible. A little suggestive if you have soft ears,
yes,
but incredible. Thank you for what you do, Tim.
No problem. It's just a blast doing it. And yes, everybody be prepared for this one. This is a bit of a good one. It's a good one. Let's just go there.
Yeah. Yes, it is. By the way, I got to tell you a quick story before we get into the UFO report, because I believe you have your little mini rant today.
No, I don't, actually. I didn't have time.
Okay. Well, my dad is going to come with us to Flight 21.
Yes.
And last night before the show, my dad's up here visiting. Last night before the show, we were playing my dad a couple of EVPs that we've got from that area. And he comes up to me at dinner time tonight, and he's like, that kid's voice, was there children there? I'm like, no, Dad. It was just Tim and I. Well, how did that record? Like, he was just absolutely enthralled by it. I'm like, Dad, we don't know.
No.
He goes, is that going to happen when we're up there? I'm like, it might. I said, Dad, you're probably going to get scared.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we're not going to be there at dark, are we? I'm like, no, just until it gets dark.
Yeah, exactly. Just when it starts getting real spooky.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. All right, what do you got for us, Tim?
Well, U.S. Congressman Eric Burleson, a member of the House Oversight Committee, has disclosed startling details from a private conversation with David Grush, who is now serving as his special advisor. So Grush, who gained attention for his 2023 congressional testimony, allegedly told Burleson about multiple extraterrestrial species interacting with Earth. These included advanced greys, who reportedly operate mind-controlled craft far superior to human technology, and Nordics, human-like beings possibly living undetected among us. Grush's claims, shared behind closed doors, also referenced a secret government program concealing non-human technology and biological material from crashed vehicles, allegations he first raised under oath. Burleson, initially skeptical of extraterrestrial origins, now views Grush's insight as credible, citing his decorated 14-year intelligence career and the Inspector General's partial validation of his claims about government secrecy. While the Pentagon's Arrow denies evidence of extraterrestrial technology, Burleson suspects advanced propulsion systems or drones are being hidden in classified budgets, potentially within private sector programs, shielded from oversight. He advocates for a formal UFO and UAP committee to grant Congress need-to-know access to these programs, emphasizing transparency, there's that word, for taxpayers. Grush's role as Burleson's advisor, announced in March of 2025, aims to leverage his connections, including ties to Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, to probe deeper into alleged cover-ups. Burleson's push for answers and testified after June of 2025 conference in Mexico, where he examined the controversial Boogosphere and an alleged alien remains alongside UFO researcher Jaime Maussan.
Jaime Maussan.
Mosan. Though he remains cautious about unverified claims like Peru's alien mummies, despite Pentagon reports suggesting UFO sightings stem from military disinformation or advanced human technology, Burleson's pursuit of Grush's leads signals a bold challenge to decades of secrecy surrounding UFOs and UAPs. So, again, theme from last night, more government officials coming out and going, hang on a second, I've got some news, and I'm, there's a lot of non-believers that are becoming, I guess, more so believers than not.
Nancy Mace, who's also been very vocal over the past couple of years about this topic, she actually came out today as well saying that we need to know what's going on. We can't keep spending billions on this without knowing, and she used the word, our favorite word, transparency as well. So it is something that we are, going to be seeing. I'm wondering if this is going to heat up into new hearings coming up. I'm wondering. I don't know. I hope not. I really hope not.
Oh, yeah. Another bowl of oatmeal for breakfast. It's like, oh my God, can we have Fruit Loops? Yeah, it's the same old. Yeah, I agree with you. The same old. We don't need any more hearings. We just need people to open their mouths and just go here. Okay, here. Confirm.
You know what it's like? It would be like putting a child, like my boy, lifting up the hood of my Jeep, putting him in front and saying, fix it, without a game plan, without any knowledge, and me saying to him, when he asked me, what do I do here, Dad? How do I check the oil, or how do I check the transmission fluid? And me saying, buy my book. Right? But that's what we're looking at here. It's a stupid example. But that's exactly with what we're looking at here.
Right.
Because we have to sit here and watch these guys run around in circles, not providing any information.
Yeah.
Why waste the money? And Nancy Mace and Anna Paulina Luna are right. If we're going to keep using this word transparency, give us something that we can be transparent with.
Yeah, no, you're right, and it's exactly it. The words being used, and it's funny because there's you and I have had discussions about this off the air and on the air. I think that the people don't actually understand the definition of the words. That's all I can think of, is they use them in sentences and don't actually use the definition to what it's there for. They make up their own definitions, I guess, or they ignore the definitions. But you're right. Transparency is transparency. I don't know. I don't even know what else to say about that. It's like, come on, you guys. Yeah. Use a dictionary, see what it actually means before you speak it. I don't know.
What else you got for us?
Well, Arrow. So, former Pentagon Aero Director Sean Kirkpatrick, one of my favorite people, has clarified remarks made by his successor, Tim Phillips, regarding an alleged operations plan for handling UFOs. In an email exchange with researcher Dean Johnson, Kirkpatrick addressed Phillips' comments from a recent interview on John Goodyear's Event Horizon podcast, where Phillips referenced a document of unclear origin related to UFO recovery protocols. Kirkpatrick stated, the operations plan mentioned by Tim Phillips likely refers to the debunked SOM 101 MJ12 document. He emphasized that no new documents of this nature were discovered during his tenure as director of Aero. I can confirm no such documents were found while I was at Aero, Kirkpatrick states, distancing himself from speculation about the secretive UFO and UAP programs. Phillips, who served as Aero's deputy director under Kirkpatrick and now leads the office, had suggested in an interview that a document outlined procedures for UAP and UFO recovery, sparking interest among researchers. Kirkpatrick's response aims to quell speculation, pointing to the MJ-12 documents, widely dismissed as a hoax since their emergence in the 80s, which purported to detail a secret government group managing extraterrestrial evidence. The exchange highlights ongoing tensions in the UAP research, with Kirkpatrick maintaining a skeptical stance. His comments align with his previous statements, including a 2024 Scientific America op-ed where he wrote, "I found no evidence of aliens or extraterrestrial technology during my time at Arrow. The classification comes amid heightened public and congressional interest in UAP and UFO transparency, though no official comment from Phillips or Arrow has followed Kirkpatrick's remarks." Now, my brain, after I read that, was like, okay, so the article notes ongoing tensions in UAP research, which, in my opinion, points to internal disagreements and inconsistencies within Arrow, right? So if the director and the deputy director are publicly contradicting each other, then this casts major doubt on the office's ability to provide reliable information, in my opinion. So now we've got two people from the same department going, it's true. No, it's not true. It's true. It's not true. What happened when these two were working together? Like, this just proves that to me, that Arrow is a cluster. And, my opinion, but doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand it. And the lack of response coming out of Arrow to say, to either support Tim or support Kirkpatrick, whatever the case may be. Crickets. It's like, you guys are being threatened to be defunded. You guys are under a microscope, and nobody steps up to this. It just blows my mind. I don't get it.
Sorry, I had my mic down because I was sneezing earlier.
You were choking. Yes, I know.
Yeah. My allergies kicked in.
Oh.
Sean Kirkpatrick reminds me of my former sports director when I worked in sports radio in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
Where we worked in sports, man. We had the cushiest job ever.
Right.
Covering all professional sports, from golf to hockey to football, baseball, basketball, okay, everything. We got press passes for everything. We could play free golf anywhere we wanted. And yet every day it was the worst day of his life.
Really?
Sean Kirkpatrick reminds me of that. I mean, in my mind, Tim Phillips seems like a guy who really wanted to find some answers.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Kirkpatrick felt it was his job to dismiss absolutely everything.
Right.
I don't know who's right, who's wrong. Maybe I'm reading the situation wrong. But you're right. There does seem to be a real disconnect between the information that both of them are putting out.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I mean, also, too, if you think about it, the MJ-12 documents were I've researched on that a little bit, so now I can know what I'm talking about a bit. But those were debunked like way back in the Stone Age, in the 80s. So all of this was debunked. So for Kirkpatrick to suggest that Phillips is referring to those documents, that's an underhanded one of those, slaps, right? Like, do you think Phillips is really that? I don't know. I would not say dumb, but okay. Do you really think that he's that inept that he would refer to a document that's been widely dismantled and debunked for 40, 50 years now? I don't think so. So now it seems to me Kirkpatrick is insulting the guy, right? It's like, wow, I don't understand it. But yeah, they're making a mess of it. That's for sure.
That's for sure. We got about 3.5 minutes. What else you got for us?
All right. Well, in a recent video from Sol Foundation, former CIA operations officer James Szubski provided a detailed account supporting claims made by whistleblower David Grush regarding a long-standing U.S. government cover-up of UFO. Szubski, speaking to the Sol Forum, outlined how secrecy surrounding UFOs may have taken root in the 1940s. Really, shedding light on the mechanisms and key figures involved in establishing this alleged concealment. So Semivan asserted that the cover-up began shortly after World War II, driven by concerns over national security and public panic. There was a fear that if the public knew about the objects, it could destabilize society, he said, referencing the early days of the Cold War, when sightings of unexplained craft surged. He described a concerted effort to control information, stating the decision was made at the highest levels to keep this out of the public domain to protect both strategic interests and societal stability. Grush, former Air Force intelligence officer, claimed the U.S. government possesses non-human spacecraft and has engaged in multi-decade programs to recover and reverse engineer such technology. Sammy Van echoed this, saying, "What David is saying aligns with what I've come to understand. There's a reality here that's been deliberately obscured." He pointed to the specific historical moments included in the Roswell incident as pivotal. Roswell wasn't just a weather balloon. It set the stage for the secrecy, or for a secrecy apparatus that's been in place ever since. And he's right. He's completely right. And I don't know how to take Mr. Semivan at times when I read some of his stuff, but I have to agree with him on this. I mean, he's stating the obvious, and I think it's kind of a little bit weak, but still, it's again somebody else stepping out and saying, "Yeah, no, this is I agree with this." So more voices in higher places are definitely starting to emerge, and there seems to be a ton of interviews going around with these, ex officials and retired officials starting to talk and just witnessing, not whistleblowing.
And that's exactly it. But that's all they have.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird how we will accept, if you listen to our guest earlier tonight with James Szubski,
Mm-hmm.
here he's built and increased his business by talking about these stories with people and allowing them to share their experiences with him.
Right.
And yet, when it comes to the government officials, we don't want to accept their stories. Now, I agree, and we've had this conversation. They are not whistleblowers. They are people who are experiencers of the phenomena. And I really do believe that they are leaving very, very fast clues as to where this might be hiding, where it could go, while protecting their own heinies as well.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see more of this. I don't think we need more whistleblowers. I think we do need more action
Yes.
from them. And if they're coming out and stating things, bring it on.
Yeah.
Bring it on. Keep them coming. But at least if you're called in front of Congress, don't say I can't answer that here, or I could answer that in a skiff,
Right.
or that'll go against my NDA.
Mm-hmm.
We need more.
Definitely.
These stories are great, but they're no better than your stories or my stories, Tim.
Yep. Agree, sir.
And on that note, we say goodnight to little Timmy James and the UFO report coming up next. It's the Dave 101 and the weird news of the week. All right. A big thank you to Tim for that. Hi, Lex Diaz. Hi, Mayhem. And to our resident socialist, Acuff Rose is back. Isn't that nice?
It's very nice, actually.
Yeah. He loves it when you pay for all of his stuff. He loves it. Memory of an elephant, that guy.
Oh, exactly. All right, my friends. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the Dave 101.
I will.
We will talk soon.
I will.
All right, buddy. Take it easy. Have a good night.
Talk to you later. River Dog, how you doing, buddy? Hope you're well. My beard keeps on getting stuck inside my microphone foam. All right. Jeff Steve Garvey is here. He'll hit a home run for you. Tried something different. I waxed my hair today. I didn't put gel in. I waxed it. A little bit different feel. Squitter Hyena, welcome to SOR Chat. Glad it's your first time here. Thank you for joining us. Cocoa butter. And it smells good too, cocoa butter. That might be interesting. We got just over 90 seconds. Scott S., how you doing? Thank you tonight to CS, Deboruni, Kitty Caddywhack, the Golden B. Arthur, Michelle, and Necessary Dialogue for the great super chats. Always appreciate your love and support of Spaced Out Radio. Mayhem, good job. Way to go. Here we go in 7 seconds. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. We have the Dave 101 and the weird news of the week coming up next. So we're glad you're here with us. Hey, we want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. It's that time of the night, that time of the week, where I yell at each and every one of you to get off my lawn. It's the Dave 101. I am not ranting today. I am encouraging. Yes, Mr. Positive himself, me, Dave Scott, is actually going to encourage all of you to get out in the field and go have some fun with these weird topics that we talk about on a nightly basis. Why? Because there's mysteries out there that you can potentially solve and experience. Whether it's ghosts, whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's staring up at the night sky looking for UFOs. Maybe learn how to summon. Maybe you'll get contact. But the point of it all is we all really love these types of stories. We love hearing about people's experiences. So why aren't you, the listener, doing anything about it? Why aren't you going out in the forest or going out into a dark countryside or going to a haunted location and trying to make contact for yourself? Look, I'm saying this all because, as many of you know, I've been talking ad nauseum about Flight 21 and the experiences Tim James and I are having this time around. Eventually, we'll be joined by Samantha and Merle. But prior to that, Samantha Mowat and Merle, I've investigated there numerous times with them. But I'm like a kid in a candy store now, looking forward to every Saturday, going out into the bush and actually seeing what weird, strange things can actually happen. And I know many of you, and I thank you for it, are hanging on to every word and every video that we are putting out because it's caught your attention as well. But you know what? You're allowed to do it too. I know some of you may not be able to get there, whether it's due to disability, whether it's due to travel, whether it's due to getting a vehicle to go out there. I know each and every one of us has maybe a reason that we can't get out there, and a logical reason at best. But for those of you who have the opportunity to hop in your own vehicle, drive out into the countryside to get away from the light pollution of where you live, go someplace dark where you can actually see the constellations in the stars, and go sit there under the starlight. Even if you don't see a UFO, I'm telling you, that is a great way to spend a night. Now, one of the things that I have often griped about when it comes to paranormal television is literally it's the same locations on every show looking for the same ghosts. The Lizzie Borden house, Gettysburg, Alcatraz, all of the insane asylums, all of the rundown former prisons and jails. Very rarely do we see somebody step out of the box and look for something around these small community legends. And I bet you Whether you live in a big city or whether you live in a small rural town, every city or town has their own legend. And maybe, just maybe, you could be the person to check it on out. Become your little town's cryptid historian. Become a ghost hunter on your own. Don't join a team, because then you'll have to have a pose, standing up, looking all serious with your arms crossed in front of you, on an angle, of course, staring into the camera all seriously, looking like you're of some sort of importance. There's my snide shot at the paranormal. But it is fun being out there. Even if nothing happens, the thought of the adventure is exciting. It's an adrenaline rush. It's something that you absolutely have to try if you haven't already. It's easy to study these subjects on YouTube or on Google or on any video sharing or picture sharing Facebook page. But it's another game altogether when you're doing it on your own. When you're building up your own intuition to be able to take these subjects and run with them yourself. I look at the topic of this Flight 21, where this weekend I'm going to bring my dad out there. He's 76 years old, and it's only been about the last year that he's thought his son, me, named after him, isn't crazy or loony. He actually thinks that there might be something going on. And as I stated with James just last half hour, when I was having my dad sit in the studio last night, and we were listening, and I was playing for him EVPs that we have caught on our recordings, I want to be able to have him experience that as well. And I think it's really cool at 76 years old that he is actually putting himself out there to say, hey, I wouldn't mind seeing or having one of these experiences. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we are going to try and accomplish. And you can do the exact same thing. Go down to your local library and check out the history of your living area. Maybe there's a legend or monster that is there. Go talk to some of the old timers who have lived in your town or city for the last 50, 60, maybe 70 plus years, and find out what their stories are, what they heard on the street corners while they were hanging on out as kids. Remember when kids actually used to do that? That's what I would do. And don't worry about my dad. He'll be very protected with us, physically and spiritually. So it'll be good. It'll be really, really good for you to experience it as well. And that's what I'm actually looking forward to. And that's why I'm feeling so positive right now. Because I want people who maybe don't believe in this subject, maybe a little bit skeptical, or maybe you're a believer that's never had an experience. I want you to be able to experience the thrill, the enjoyment, the fear factor, the anticipation, the anxiety of what we go through on a nightly basis when we're out in the field. It is a character of emotions that run through your body waiting for something to happen. Now, most of the time, it never does happen. You're on edge waiting for something to happen that never comes. But there are those times when all of a sudden you could be out in the field for 3-4 hours, and then all of a sudden you have literally 3 or 4 minutes of mayhem. And it scares the daylights out of you and makes you feel alive again. I'm telling you, it is better than watching reruns of Matlock or Golden Girls. Boy, did I age myself with that one. But it's better than having reruns, playing around, and sitting on your couch eating some potato chips and drinking your favorite beverage. Life is about adventure, and I would absolutely love you to be able to feel what I get to feel. I'm telling you, when I get out of Flight 21, I feel a sense of accomplishment. There is a long silence when Tim James and I are driving on back because we're trying to process everything that happened or what didn't happen. There's always the fear of whether there's a UFO flying over top of you, following you out of the forest until you get to the safety grounds of crossing the cattle guard and you can see the town, at least in my area. It is a bunch of benefiting factors that we have to be able to understand. So what I'm asking all of you is to take the chance. What do you have to lose? Adventure? Maybe a little bit of gas money? And I know for many of you, gas is expensive these days. Try living in Canada. But the thrill is worth it. It makes you feel alive. Having that little sense of fear in the pit of your stomach. Having your body tighten up because you're hearing things that shouldn't be heard. Whether it's disembodied voices. Whether it's things that you can't see moving through the trees and making noise. It is all worth it. And if you're into ghost hunting and that's what you want to do because maybe you don't have a forest around that you could get to easily, you don't have to pay a lot of money in order to do it. Now, I'm not recommending you go get any of those apps that are on your phone that say they can communicate with ghosts. Most of those don't work. They're just spitting out words because they feel like it. They don't have an endless vocabulary like humans do, or former humans do. But all you need is your phone. That's all you need. And your own intuition. Your phone has a digital voice recorder. Your phone has a built-in camera, both for static shots and video, as well as panoramic. That's all you need. Find your local haunting spots, doesn't have to be a graveyard, and just go and enjoy the night. If you're not sure what you do, say hi. Mention your name and introduce yourself like you're having a conversation with an old friend. It doesn't hurt to do that. All it does is takes a little bit of time and effort. And before you know it, you're having fun. Fun like you may never have had before. And it'll be worth it. You might even be able to get an experience that you just cannot explain. And that's the fun of it. You get to tell a wild story of what happened. A wild occurrence of something you've never experienced that will be with you, etched in your memory forever. Look, 99.9% of what we do as enthusiasts or as explorers of this phenomena are never, ever scary situations. You're prepared for it, but it rarely ever happens. So if you're worried about the fear factor, don't worry about it. You probably have a better chance of being hit by lightning than something bad happening on a ghost hunt. Maybe. But that's for you to find out. So going into this 4th of July weekend, go have some fun. Let your woo out. Don't spend any money unless it's on fireworks, hot dogs, and badass Leonard Skinner music. Freebird, baby. Freebird America. Go enjoy the paranormal. It's out there for you to find. That's your Dave 101. Let's get to the news. All right, let's get right to it here. A woman flying for the first time in 15 years recently shared that both airports she passed through flagged her groin area during the security scan. No, she didn't have any piercings, no medical devices, no pocket rockets, and her pockets were empty. The only possible culprit? Sweaty crotch. Yep, believe it or not, she posted it on Reddit, found out she wasn't alone. Other travelers have chimed in with similar stories, pointing to what one security officer allegedly called swamp crotch. You can't make this up. The term might sound a little disgusting or ridiculous, but it lines up with how the scanners work. TSA's millimeter wave technology doesn't just detect metal, it responds to anything that disrupts the signal, including moisture. TSA expert Shauna Malvini-Redden says to Reader's Digest that sweat is one of the strangest things that can trigger an alert because of how the waves bounce off water. That kind of false positive happens more than people realize. Sweat isn't the only thing that might get you stopped at security. Feminine products, snug clothing, or even body shape can trip the scanner as well. TSA has said their systems are designed to accommodate a range of body types, but the reality is some people, especially those with fuller figures, get flagged more often. Some countries have decided it's not worth the hassle. France and Germany have moved away from this type of scanner altogether because of the high number of false alarms. The United States, though, has not followed suit. The woman who shared her story said the agents were polite and professional during the pat-down, so she really didn't mind the extra screening, but the whole thing left her confused, especially since it happened twice in one trip. Describing herself as mid-size, wearing bike shorts and regular underwear, other Redditors noted that it could feel awkward or invasive to be singled out for something as mundane as a sweaty crotch. And while the scanners are supposed to increase safety, travelers are now wondering if it's even worth it. It just doesn't seem to make sense. Swamp crotch, people. Swamp crotch. I'd never heard of this before. I really haven't. Yeah, so for now, if your thighs are sticking together by the time you reach security, you may want to pack some powder down there. Consider moisture-wickening underwear. Okay, because apparently sweat alone is enough to raise the alarm. Who knows? Who knew? Let's move on. Here's a weird tourist attraction. In a city that's always fighting rats, one woman has decided to embrace them. Susan Reisman, self-proclaimed rat whisperer, leads a garbage and rats walking tour through Manhattan and around its filthiest alleys and corners for $40 a ticket. This lady's making bank. $40 a ticket. Guests follow her through the underbelly of New York, learning about rodent sex habits up to 20 times a day, rat history, and how dog poop functions as an urban snack bar. They'll kick through it, find the undigestible kibble, she explained. I do not ever pass by dog poop anymore without thinking, oh, it's a rat snack. Yeah, she wears fuzzy rat ears on her head, of course she does, and treats her 2-hour tour like a cross between a sanitation field trip and an urban wildlife safari. Guests are introduced to the Norway rat, a misleading name since they're actually from Asia, and learn how they arrived on Hessian ships in the 1700s have basically never left. They take a look around and think, jackpot, Reisman said. They're just beyond super happy. Oh, isn't that nice? Would you take that tour? I don't know if I would. And finally, a sequestered jury in Australia began deliberations in the triple murder trial of Erin Patterson, who's accused of killing her estranged husband's relatives by deliberately serving them poisonous mushrooms for lunch. 3 of Patterson's 4 lunch guests, her parents-in-law, Dawn and Gail Patterson, and Gail's sister, Heather, died in hospital after the 2023 meal at her home, at which she served individual beef Wellington pastries containing death cap mushrooms. She is accused of attempting to murder the 4th, Heather's husband, Ian, who was gravely ill but survived. During the 9-week trial in the state of Victoria, Patterson gave evidence in her own defense. 50-year-old mother of 2 faces life in prison if she's convicted. So in other words, don't dine with her if she says, hey, can I make you a special dinner tonight? Oh, that's just scary. As we say hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAV, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. Good job, everybody. Good job. Give yourselves a round of applause. That was a good show. Very good show. Jaren's Carter, stirring it up. Where's our friend Dan? What's the odds he's showing up tomorrow night? Our Keith Andrews on the show tomorrow night, my peeps. It shall be fun. It shall be fun. Excuse me. I saw Bob Dylan once in concert. Worst concert I've ever been to. Next to King's X opening up for AC/DC in 1991 or 92? 91 on the Thunderstruck tour, or the Razor's Edge tour, pardon me. All right, everybody. Thank you tonight to Kitty Caddywhack, Necessary Dialogue, B. Arthur, Crazy Hot Morgan, Deborah Rooney, CS, and Mayhem. I appreciate your love and support, everyone. Go have a good night. Start your 4th of July off properly. You people in America, I love you. I love your country. Love everything you guys do. Stay away from the politics. Enjoy what your country has done for you. It is Happy Treason Day from us in the Commonwealth. And to the rest of you, it is all the best to the 4th of July. You guys are amazing. Thank you for making this show your favorite. I appreciate it. Enjoy your fireworks. We'll see you tomorrow night. And happy birthday to the United States of America. Good night, everybody. Have a good one. Be safe.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.